Hey guys, so I'm back with another video, and I had a suggestion to watch something about the Franks and the birth of Europe. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get schooled today. I'm gonna learn about some European history. So let's get into it.
After the Great Migration of peoples, the map of Europe changed significantly. In Western Europe, on the lands of the Roman Empire, new states emerged, which historians called barbarian kingdoms, because power in these states was held by Germanic barbarians who had come from across the Rhine. One such tribe were the Franks, who were destined to lead the next epoch in the history of Europe. The name Franks comes from the Proto-Germanic fra, meaning free. From the very beginning of their existence, the Franks were powerful and numerous, as they represented an alliance of several smaller
Wait, hold on.
tribes.
I gotta go back. What time is this? What is the time? We're at 43.
After the Great Migration of peoples, the map of Europe
The Great Migration of Peoples? The Great Migration of Peoples. Uh, that's like really long ago? Like, what is that? Great Migration? Like 50,000? Like, what is that? Ice Age? Like, what is that? Okay, so, okay, I don't, what is the time?
changed significantly. In Western Europe, Merovingian family, Elvis,
Okay, whatever. I'm
hence
gonna
their
find
for
out. I'm gonna
time,
find
all
out what
lived
time it
along the
is eventually.
coast, hence their name meaning maritime in Frankish, and the Ripuarian Franks, who lived along the Rhine. Their name comes from the name of the riverbank. The leader who united the two alliances was the chief of the Salian Franks, Clovis, who came from the Merovingian family. Through marriage diplomacy, he successfully united the Franks in 485 and
Okay.
became their king. That
485.
same year, he began a war with the Gaul-Roman kingdom
Oh.
of Soissons. The following year, he defeated the Gauls in a battle near their capital and captured their territories.
Okay.
When the Alemanni invaded Frankish territory again
Oh,
in 496,
that's not gonna go
Clovis
well.
defeated them in the Battle of
course he did.
Tolbiac, and then the Franks easily subjugated half of the Alemanni lands. In 500, Clovis attacked Burgundy and won the battle at Dijon. The
Okay.
Franks established a protectorate over
Clovis.
Burgundy, which remained nominally independent.
Clovis the
But
Great.
Clovis' greatest achievement was the war with the Visigoths. Using the pretext of intervening in the affairs of Burgundy, the Frankish king invaded the Visigothic kingdom in 507, won the
Okay.
Battle of Ouillé, and took all of southern Gaul for himself,
Dude,
which then
Clovis.
constituted almost half of the
Clovis the
Visigothic
Great.
lands. Clovis expanded Frankish possessions several times over, and is considered in history the founder and first king of France.
Okay.
To strengthen his power, Clovis carried out administrative reforms, moved the capital to Paris, and
500
also
AD.
wrote a code of laws. But his most significant decision was the acceptance of Christianity under the Catholic Rite, in opposition to Arianism, which was then professed by the majority of Germanic tribes, and which in Rome itself was considered heresy, a distorted version of Christianity. Thus, Clovis achieved an alliance with the Church, which made it possible to consolidate power over the Franks for his dynasty. The subsequent Merovingians did not achieve the heights of Clovis. The only success of his descendants was the temporary annexation of the dependent Burgundy, but only for the Franks to soon split into 4 kingdoms.
Okay.
The kings of this dynasty were noted for their incompetent rule, often preferring entertainment to state affairs. It is not surprising
Well-
that these rulers were dubbed by contemporaries as lazy
There's
kings.
no one else to conquer.
And
Just
while
gotta
they
party.
sat on the throne, power in the kingdoms began to be usurped by aristocrats and administrators. The position of mayor of the palace was important for the nobility. He managed the royal palace, had access to the treasury, the guard, and all royal decrees. Thus, the mayors of the palace took over all practical power. For a long time in Austrasia, the position of mayors of the palace was held by 2 influential families, from the union of which Pepin of Herstal was born.
Pip-
In 680, he inherited the position of mayor of the palace from
680?
his father.
Whoa, whoa,
and
whoa.
through
Okay. We have gone like 200 years. Okay.
strength, intrigue, and diplomacy, managed to unite the 4 Frankish kingdoms. After
Oh.
which he focused on campaigns
Good
against
job,
the
Pep.
Frisians, Saxons, and Franconians, which, however, did not bring
Wait,
him against the
what happened?
Frisians, the four Frankish kingdoms. After which he focused on campaigns against the Frisians, Saxons, and Franconians, which, however, did not bring him significant success. Pepin's inheritance was received by his illegitimate son, Charles, nicknamed Martel, which
Chuck.
means hammer. It took him
Chuck.
4 years to seize power and put the puppet king Chilperic II on the throne. However, even after this, the Franks constantly rebelled against him. In 719, Charles Martel managed to conquer Frisia, and by 730, he forcefully established a protectorate over Alemannia, Thuringia, and Bavaria. In 732, Arabs invaded Frankish territory on the Iberian Peninsula under the command of Abd al-Rahman, and, encountering little resistance, advanced to the banks of the Loire,
Wait, who's this
their
guy?
aunt
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
territory, and Bavaria. In 732, Arabs invaded Frankish territory on the Iberian Peninsula under the command of Abd al-Rahman, and, encountering little resistance, advanced to the banks of the Loire. Their army numbered 30,000 soldiers, but the main advantage was the presence of heavy cavalry, which allowed them to make strong and swift strikes. Martel gathered only 20,000 soldiers, and moreover, he did not have strong cavalry. To somehow neutralize the enemy's advantage, the Franks occupied a hill near Poitiers and set up a fortified camp there. For a whole week, the Arabs unsuccessfully stormed them, and after the death of their commander, they were forced to retreat from the battlefield. Charles Martel gained fame as a victor. He, a bastard ruler who had been constantly rebelled against, now became a hero. He used his new authority to carry out reforms. Even though the Franks defeated the Arabs on foot, Martel appreciated the advantages of heavy cavalry, which easily broke through the infantry formation and almost defeated his army. Therefore, he decided to create his own cavalry. For this, he began to distribute land to his vassals in exchange for the requirement to appear for war mounted on a horse and in heavy metal armor. Thus, Charles Martel became the founder of European cavalry, which would play a dominant role on the battlefield for almost 1,000 years. Equally important was the emergence of a new aristocratic family among the Franks, named after its founder, Charles, the Carolingians.
Chuck?
From Charles Martel, the position of mayor of the palace was inherited by his son Pepin, nicknamed Short
Another
for
Pep?
his short stature. However, this
I
position
bet he
did
was
not
tall.
suit him, and Pepin wanted the crown. And he found an opportunity to get it. In 751, the Pope, in exchange for military assistance, crowned Pepin the Short. The last king of the Franks from the Merovingian dynasty, Childeric III, was forcibly tonsured into a monk. In gratitude, Pepin began a war with the Lombards,
Nice.
who interfered with the rule of the Pope in Italy. In 755, he crossed the Alps and captured the Lombard capital. The next year, the Lombards besieged Rome. Pepin the Short invaded Italy again, where he defeated the Lombards under the walls of Rome, and then handed over a number of lands to the Pope, called the Papal States. This will go down in history as the donation of Pepin. Pepin the Short continued to try to expand his lands. In 759, he captured Narbonne, and the next year he had to suppress the uprising of the Aquitaine people. Aquitaine was long reluctant to submit to the new dynasty. As soon as Pepin left it for the winter, the Aquitaines rebelled again, and he had to come here with an army the following spring. Pepin spent the last 8 years of his reign that way, and he died during another campaign against the rebellious Aquitaine.
Those
His
damn
eldest
rebels.
son, Charlemagne, successfully
Charlemagne.
completed the campaign against Aquitaine, mainly because he enlisted the support of part of the rebellious nobility,
What
whom
happened
he
to those
promised
cavalry? I
land
think
and
those
wealth.
cavalry could have
At the
taken
same
him out.
time, he finally annexed Gascony to the royal domains. Initially, Charles had to share the throne with his younger brother, who, however, died after 3 years of joint rule. Then
Died.
the new
He
king,
died.
having the strongest army in Western Europe, began what he had long dreamed of: conquest. Father of Charles managed to arrange a marriage for his son with the daughter of the Lombard king. But in 771, Charlemagne broke off the marriage and sent the princess back to Italy. Angry Desiderius declared war on the Pope, an ally of the Franks, and the Pope in response called on Charlemagne for help. In the autumn of 773, Charlemagne gathered his army near the Alps. The Lombards also brought their troops there. Then, on Charlemagne's orders, part of the Frankish army bypassed the enemy through little-known mountain paths and began to encircle them. In panic, the Lombard army dispersed, and Desiderius himself was forced to hide in Pavia, which the Franks soon besieged. In the spring of 774, leaving part of his troops for the siege, Charlemagne himself headed east, where the Second Lombard army was gathering. The unexpected approach of the Franks to Verona forced the Lombards to surrender without a fight. After that, Charlemagne went to Rome, made an agreement with the Pope, and returned to Pavia, whose residents, tired of hunger, soon handed over their king to the Franks. Desiderius was forcibly tonsured as a monk and taken north, and Charlemagne took the title of King of the Franks and Lombards and installed his son Pepin to rule
Another
Italy.
Pep.
While Charlemagne was
Wow,
fighting...
okay, hold on. That must have taken a long time. This guy went, like, over the mountains, went all the way over there, fought some battles, and then, like, geez, like, how long did that take? This guy takes a couple of years.
In the south, the Saxons invaded Austrasia and looted it. In response the next year, Charlemagne invaded Saxony and marched, burning Saxon towns. But before he could return home, the Lombards rebelled against him, and he had to return to Italy again. Charlemagne quickly crushed the rebellion and returned to conquering the Saxons. In 777, the Saxons agreed to peace at Paderborn and recognized Frankish rule. After subduing the north, Charlemagne turned his attention to the lands that the Franks had long dreamed of, the lands of the Visigoths, where the Arabs ruled at the time. In 778, he crossed the Pyrenees and laid siege to Zaragoza. The siege was difficult, and when Charlemagne learned that an Arab army was gathering near Barcelona to relieve Zaragoza, he hurried home. The retreat was covered by the Nantes Margrave Roland. He and his squad fell into an ambush in Roncevaux Pass, organized by the Basques in revenge for the Frankish burning of their cities. Roland became a symbol of knightly bravery and a hero of medieval literature. The Song of Roland became popular, transforming him into the king's nephew and a knight who heroically died in battle with the transforming hero of medieval literature. The Song of Roland became popular, transforming him into the king's nephew and a knight who heroically died in battle with the Arabs. The failed campaign against the Arabs was evaluated by one of the Saxon leaders, Wittekund, who was then hiding in Denmark. In 779, he returned home for the first time and raised a rebellion. Charlemagne invaded Saxony and suppressed this rebellion, reaching the Elbe with his army. This time, he not only defeated the rebel Saxons, but also forcibly baptized them, built churches and forts. The most stubborn Saxons were forcibly resettled in Aquitaine. Wittekund, however, did not give up and spent 2 years preparing for a new rebellion. This time, he conspired not only with the Saxons, but also incited the Frisians and Lusatian Slavs to rebel. Moreover, he received help from the Duke of Bavaria, who had long dreamed of getting rid of Frankish suzerainty. In 782, Wittekund returned home again, and the Saxon uprising flared up with renewed vigor. The rebellious Saxons destroyed the built forts, burned churches, executed priests, and mass refused baptism. They also managed to lure the Frankish troops, sent to suppress the rebellion, into an ambush.
Okay, pause. So it's been like almost 300 years so far. And I'm not sure why these other nations keep rebelling. I think that's just kind of like what happens. But they said something about some religion thing. So they went after, they killed a bunch of priests or whatever. So it's got to be something about I bet religion has a big thing to do with the uprisings, because this guy he's good with the Pope, so. But I think they said that you could be Christian with as like in a Catholic state or something. So maybe people are like upset with that or something. But yeah, so now there seems to be more uprisings than before, but Charlemagne um seems to be pretty good at fighting and military endeavors. So let's continue.
And defeated them in the Battle of Suntal Mountain. Angry Charlemagne gathered troops in Verdun and brought there 4,500 Saxon hostages. He ordered them all to be executed. This event will go down in history as the Massacre of Verdun. After that, Charlemagne marched with his army through the lands of the Saxons. He barely avoided defeat in the battle near Thietmali, but defeated Wittekund in the battle on the Haas River. However, he still couldn't either defeat the rebellious army or capture their leader. So Charlemagne founded the city of Frankfurt, where he settled for the next 3 years. From there, he constantly raided the Saxons, burning their towns. In addition, he expelled 7,000 inhabitants from Saxony. In 785, Wittekund, not wishing to continue the bloody war, reconciled with Charlemagne and even accepted Christianity, after which he disappeared from the pages of history. According to one legend, Wittekund killed Charlemagne, never forgiving him for the successful rebellion. According to another legend, Charlemagne made him the Duke of Saxony, from whom the dynasty of the future Ottonians descended. Charlemagne also did not forget the betrayal of Tassilo III. He also remembered that in his war against the Lombards, the Bavarians supported the latter. Moreover, scouts brought news that Tassilo III conspired for a joint attack on the Franks with the Avars. In 788 AD, Charlemagne concentrated 3 armies on the border with Bavaria. The northern one was under the command of Count Gerald of Franconia, the southern one was led by his son Pepin, and the western one was led by himself. All 3 armies began to advance simultaneously, and the Bavarians couldn't even decide whom to march against. Tassilo III capitulated without a fight and went into monasticism, and Gerald became the new Duke of Bavaria, now Bavarian. While the Franks were conquering Bavaria, the Avars invaded Italy. After plundering the Friuli region, they returned to the Danube. This became the reason for declaring war. Charlemagne invaded the Avar Khaganate, but barely avoided defeat himself and was forced to return home. In 791 AD, the Franks, led by Gerald of Bavaria and Eric of Friuli, made a new, already successful campaign. They captured most of the Avar fortresses and forced the Avars to retreat beyond the Danube. In 796, with the help of the uprising of the Slavic Horatan people against the Avars, Gerald and Eric managed to capture the Avar ruler. In 799 AD, the Franks made another campaign, in which both commanders, Eric of Friuli and Gerald of Bavaria, died. Then Prince Pepin, who took command of the Franks, ordered all Avars to be slaughtered, thus exterminating their entire nation. During the war with the Avars, Charlemagne refused to lead the armies, preferring life in the capital and political reforms.
Okay, Paris
Despite this, in 792 AD, he had to suppress a rebellion led by his illegitimate son Pepin the Hunchback. In 793 AD, Saxony rebelled against him again, and he had to march there once more.
Now.
After this, the Saxons rebelled 3 more times, but these rebellions were suppressed by Charlemagne's dukes. In 799 AD, the Franks subdued Brittany. In 801 AD, Charlemagne's son, Prince Louis, who ruled Aquitaine, invaded through the Pyrenees, captured Barcelona, and then subjugated the Basques. However, Charlemagne's main achievement during these years was obtaining a new title. He used as a pretext the fact that in Byzantium in 797, Empress Irene came to power. According to the Franks, a woman cannot be emperor. This is how Charlemagne decided to become the new emperor. The Pope, who was expelled by the Romans in 799 AD, supported Charlemagne in exchange for him returning Rome under the power of Pope. Thus, in 800 AD, on Christmas Day, the 25th of December.
So the Pope got kicked out? Pope got kicked out?
Supported Charlemagne in exchange. How Charlemagne decided to become the new emperor. The Pope, who was expelled by the Romans in 799 AD, supported Charlemagne in exchange for him returning Rome under the power of Pope. Thus, in 800 AD, on Christmas Day, the 25th of December, Charlemagne the Great was crowned Emperor of Rome, and the Frankish kingdom became an empire.
So the Romans kicked out the Pope, and then they asked Charlemagne to come back and... What? What?
Byzantium in 797, Empress Irene came to power. According to the Franks, a woman cannot be emperor.
Okay.
This is how Charlemagne decided to become the new emperor.
Okay.
The Pope, who was expelled by the Romans in 799 AD, supported Charlemagne in exchange for him returning Rome under the power of Pope.
Okay, so the Pope was like, yo, help us out, man. We got kicked out by the Romans.
Thus, in 800 AD, on Christmas Day, the 25th of December, Charlemagne the Great was crowned Emperor of Rome, and the Frankish kingdom became an empire.
Okay, I think I'm missing something here. So this guy became the king of Rome because... No. Whatever.
Emperor of Rome, 25th of December. Thus, in 800 AD, on Christmas Day, the 25th of December, Charlemagne the Great was crowned Emperor of Rome, and the...
Okay, it's a little fuzzy here. I gotta get that... It's just weird to me. So, the Pope got kicked out by Romans, and then he asked for help, and then somehow the Romans gave the crown to Charlemagne. Doesn't make any sense to me. Probably there's something missing there. But point is, he's the Emperor of Rome? Somehow.
Frankish kingdom became an empire. Tragic for Charlemagne was the year 810, when an epidemic took the lives of his two eldest sons. Therefore, all his lands were inherited by his third son, Louis, who became the new emperor upon his father's death in 814 AD.
Wow, Charlemagne
His first decision
lives
was
forever.
to expel almost all the courtly women, including his sisters, to the monastery, for which he was called the Pious. However, Louis the Pious' entire reign was marked by rebellions. In 817 AD, his nephew Bernard of Italy rebelled against him. He agreed to negotiations with the emperor, but he was captured and blinded, which led to his death. The next year, Brittany rebelled against Louis, but the rebellion was brutally suppressed. In 822 AD, the Bretons rebelled against rebellion, agreed to negotiations with the emperor, but he was captured and blinded him. In 817 AD, his nephew Bernard of Italy rebelled against him. He agreed to negotiations with the emperor, but he was captured and blinded, which led to his death.
His nephew is dead.
The next year, Brittany rebelled against Louis, but the rebellion was brutally suppressed. In 822 AD, the Bretons rebelled again and lasted in war for 3 years. In 830 AD, they rebelled once more, and this time won practical independence, which, however, the Franks recognized only 20 years later. In 830 AD, Louis faced a rebellion from his own children. They captured their father and forced him to renounce power. But a year later, they started a war among themselves and released their father, returning him to the throne so that he could decide their fate. In 837 AD, Aquitaine rebelled against
all falling
Louis,
apart.
led by his own grandson, who proclaimed himself King of Aquitaine. Louis was unable to suppress the Aquitaine rebellion. Upon the death of Louis the Pious in 840 AD, his sons again started a war for their father's inheritance. None of them had enough strength for a decisive battle and victory. Therefore, in 843 AD, the brothers signed the Treaty of Verdun, under which they divided the Frankish Empire among themselves. Thus, the empire ceased to exist. Although Lothaire continued to call himself heir
What year
Frankish,
was this?
the brothers signed the Treaty of Verdun, under which they
843.
divided the Frankish Empire among themselves. Thus, the empire ceased to exist. Although Lothaire continued to call himself emperor, it was only a formal title. The Carolingians continued to fight among themselves, and their possessions became prototypes of European states. Lothaire's lands became Italy in the future, Louis's lands, Germany. Charles' lands formed France, and the strip of land in the middle, later called Lotharingia, became the subject of disputes and wars until the 20th century.
Of course it is. I mean, look at that. Look how terrible this is split up. What? Of course they're gonna be fighting here.
Became the subject of disputes and wars until the 20th century.
Alright. Well then. That was a lot. Interesting. Okay, I don't think I've heard about that before. Okay, well then. That was really interesting. I don't really have too much to say about that, other than, I didn't know that happened. So, yeah, I guess I'm a little bit, I know a little bit more than I did 20 minutes ago, so that's good. Yeah, so I'll see you in the next video.